Hey everyone, I'm Almar of almarsguides.com, and in this video here I'm going to be talking about the Soothsayer build in Titan Quest. So this is a combination of nature and spirit mastery, and in my opinion it probably comes a little bit above average as far as build goes. It's not quite like in the god tier of builds, but it does do pretty well. I'm going to be playing on X-Max during this video, so you're going to be seeing me playing on a slightly harder difficulty in an already pretty hard act. Arguably the hardest act, Act 4. Although we're not in a very hard place, we're just in the Plains of Judgment. And as always, first I'm going to go through all the skills, then we'll go through the stats and the gear, and I'll explain hopefully everything you need to know about this build. So to get started, Heart of the Oak, well, to get started, we're looking at Nature Mastery, and Heart of the Oak is going to be the first skill we're looking at, and also one of the most important buffs you can get for this build. It increases your health and your elemental resistance. Those are the two main great things that it provides you. Big health increase, big elemental resist increase, and it also gives you some total speed, which is nice. Regrowth, you basically always skip. Refresh, this is going to be one of the bread and butter abilities of this build. Refresh basically reduces the cooldown on all skills that are currently on cooldown. So let me show you real fast. If I summon wolves and then I hit refresh, I can immediately summon another wolf like that. So, and it has more uses than just quickly summoning wolves. What you're going to be using refresh for is every fight you're able to drop Circle of Power, Briar Ward, and use Soul Vortex, so long as you use refresh in between every single fight. And I'll be explaining Briar Ward and Soul Vortex, Briar Ward and Circle of Power a little bit later. Well, actually, I'm going to be explaining Briar Ward in a second. But Soul Vortex and Circle of Power we'll explain when we get to Spirit. So Briar Ward, what makes this so good is it offers protection. Basically summons a bunch of little briars around your character, and enemies will have to kill the briars before they're able to get to your character. And the briars have a little bit of piercing retaliation. I'd recommend putting a lot of points into Briar Ward, 1 point into Stinging Nettle. There's no reason in maxing out Stinging Nettle, and then max out Sanctuary as well. Sanctuary is a it's really the main reason that we're going to be using Briar Ward. It reduces the energy cost of all spells when you're standing in it, increases your health regen, and most importantly gives you damage absorption. And that's percentage-based damage started fumbling all over my words today. And that's percentage-based damage absorption, which is phenomenal. It's one of the best defensive stats, for lack of better words, that you can get. Call of the Wild, this is going to be your pets. As always, you want to max out Call of the Wild. You also want to get at least +3, but arguably +4 to all of your skills. That way you can summon 3 wolves instead of just 2. And then you're going to max out Survival Instinct and Strength of the Pact. You only put 1 point into Maul. It's not very good. Sylvan Nymph, as always, this is my skill point dump skill. I just always put 1 point into each of these. And then once you basically start running out of putting skill points into more productive skills, then you can dump them into Sylvan Nymph and Overgrowth. Don't put anything into the Nature's Wrath or Sylvan Protection Toe. I don't think those two are really worth getting. But Overgrowth is pretty good. And so is the Sylvan Nymph. So Plague, this is the last skill in nature that I'm going to be talking about. And this skill isn't as good for our build as it would normally be. There's two main things you're going to be using Plague for. One, it increases the damage that your pets are going to deal because it reduces the physical resistance of enemies that you're fighting. Also, it will give you percentage-based reduced damage on any enemies that are under the effect of Plague. However, Death Chill Aura also gives reduced damage from any enemies that are under the effect of Death Chill Aura, and these effects do not stack. Whatever effect is greater is essentially the one that takes precedence on the mob. So what I like to do is I like to cast Plague on archers that I'm fighting, and any melee characters, any melee monsters will be under the reduced damage of Death Chill Aura, and then any of the archers will be under the reduced damage of Plague. So that way you reduce the damage of kind of all enemies on the field between these two abilities, and they complement each other pretty well. So moving on to Spirit Master, we have Turnian Attack, which is going to be our main attack. This is my left click ability. I'd recommend maxing out both Tourney and Attack as well as Arcane Lore, although Tourney and Attack is more important. Death Chill Aura and the passives that come with it are going to be extremely important for this build. As I was talking about before, Ravages of Time reduces damage of all enemies, all incoming damage you take from enemies that are close to you. Death Chill Aura also provides you a whole bunch of nice little benefits, but most importantly, this one is the most important one, which decreases the vitality damage resistance of enemies that you're fighting. So this combined with Tourney and Attack is how we're going to be dealing a lot of damage with our build. Because Tourney and Attack, basically, I'm trying to think of how to describe it. It turns your normal staff attacks into like a multiple projectile, more powerful attack. Well, less powerful attack until you max out the ability. Then it will no longer reduce the total damage of your staff attacks. But with Death Chill Aura, since this reduces the vitality damage resistance, if you get a staff like this one that deals vitality damage, then you'll be able to deal extra damage because you're reducing the vitality damage resistance of enemies you're fighting. This comes with one drawback, though. There's some enemies in the game that are highly resistant to vitality damage, like undead enemies. And that will make, since we're using a vitality damage staff, we'll be dealing almost no damage to those undead enemies. So you can get around this one of two ways. One, if you're just playing on normal difficulty, not Xbox, no mods or anything like that, your pets typically will handle all enemies that are highly resistant to vitality damage. However, you might still want to deal damage to them too, instead of just being useless. What you can do is get another staff, one that doesn't deal vitality damage. That way you can weapon swap to it and still attack these enemies with, whatever other element that staff is. Yes, that staff won't do as good of damage. That is the drawback. However, dealing some damage is better than dealing no damage. That's how I look at it. So Death Ward, this is just usually a 1-point wonder until later on when you can invest more points into it. Life Drain, I don't really recommend you get this for the build. We're already struggling with how many skills we have to invest in. I put 1 point into it because I like using it when I'm fighting archer enemies, but I would honestly recommend you don't because it's just not worth it for this build. So the Summon Lich King, I'd recommend you actually max out Summon Lich King and the skills that come with it. All of them are worth it. Unless you don't plan on using the Lich King pet for dealing damage, which I would honestly recommend you use him. He's an additional source of damage aside from our damage. And he also does, instead of just vitality damage, he also does elemental damage, which is nice. And I think he has another damage type too, but I forget. But he's a good pet. I do like him as a pet. He is a bit of a skill point dump, though, so keep that in mind. Spirit Ward, this is worth getting because we're dealing a lot of vitality damage, and Spirit Ward will increase the amount of damage we deal to undead. Also, it will decrease the amount of damage undead deal to us, I'm pretty sure. Yes, which is nice. Circle of Power, as I was saying before, this is going to be one of your bread and butter abilities. You want to throw this bad boy on the ground every single fight. And because we're going to be using Refresh, which reduces the cooldown of all abilities that are currently on cooldown, we'll be able to use Circle of Power pretty much every single fight, which is very nice. The main benefits of Circle of Power are the plus 100% vitality damage that it gives to us. This, combined with our, this is also why it's so important for us to use that vitality damage staff, because we're going to reduce the vitality damage of our vitality resistances of enemies we're fighting, and we're going to buff the vitality damage that we deal. These cohabitate, for lack of better words, very well together, and it's a very good combo. It also does some other things like increases your casting speed, also reduces recharge time, which is nice too, and reduces energy costs, so we're never running out of energy. And then Soul Vortex. This is going to be another bread and butter ability for this build. Well, actually, it's kind of optional, but I love using it. It's one of those things where it has a very long cooldown, and usually I would not recommend you invest skill points in the Soul Vortex. However, with this build, we're using Refresh, and we don't have to really worry about long cooldown abilities, so you can pop Soul Vortex every single fight if you want to. And it doesn't do that much damage, but it keeps you alive for the 4-second duration that it lasts, is usually how I look at it. Soul Vortex will it'll drain the life and energy of all enemies you're fighting, and it does a really good job healing you. So let me show you my gear and my stats. So like I said before, we're using a Vitality Damage Staff. This is very, very important for this build. And as far as your other staff, use whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. You can do whatever as far as your other staff goes. That is really the only important thing on the staff. There are not many Vitality Damage staffs in the game, so you're going to be kind of fighting for finding a good one. What I'd recommend you do is go to Gadir, the first town in the Atlantis expansion pack, and use the gambling loot crates that he has. You can buy a legendary orb from him for 5,000 gold, which isn't that expensive, and usually you'll have a pretty good chance of, you'll have a great chance of getting gear from that orb, but the chance of you getting a Vitality Damage staff is, random. So as far as my rings go, I use Chiron's Loop and Eurydice's Wedding Band. Chiron's Loop I'm using for the Pierce and Poison Resist, as well as the extra benefit survivability that comes with it. Really no other reason, though. And Eurydice's Wedding Band, I'm using this for the Vitality Damage buff that it gives. It also gives a percentage to health and energy, which are nice as well, and also a percentage to defensive ability, which is nice too, although not needed. Pluton's Crown is the helm slot that I'm running with right here. The main reason I'm wearing this helm slot is because I'm using the Polydigmon amulet, and I wanted the set bonus between the two. But otherwise, this helm is a pretty good helm as far as poison resist goes, if you need some of that on your character, and it also comes with other secondary resists, which are nice, like stun, skill, disruption, and of course energy regen and recharge reduction and energy cost reduction are all nice on it. Tunic of the Magi is the chest piece that I went with, and I went with this solely for the increased resistances that come with it. It has just tons of resists on it, which are all great and needed. It also comes with the 10% total damage, which is decent too. And as you can see, some decent defensive ability and other goodies on it. Stonebinder's Cuffs, as per usual with a lot of my builds. The secondary bonuses on this pair of Stonebinder's Cuffs weren't very needed. I don't really need the energy and the energy regeneration. I already have tons of it on my other gear, so that's kind of wasted. Really, the only thing I'm using these Stonebinder's Cuffs for are the +3 to all skills and the Iron Will of Ajax incarnation that are that's socketed into it. Even the elemental resistances on both the Stonebinder's Cuffs and the Iron Will are probably not very needed. So this amulet was probably the best amulet that I think I could have chosen for this build, and I chose this for the increase in total damage, along with the percentage based to health, along with everything else. This character has a lot of plus percentage health increases, which are fantastic because survivability is nice for no other reason than that. Demon Skin Walkers, I'm using these for the +1 to all skills, as well as the other resistances that come on it. A lot of these resists are really, really nice, and were very, very, very highly needed. And then Apples of Idun, I'm using this for the Vitality Damage resist. Also, I get the +1 to all skills for Nature Mastery and extra survivability bonuses that come with it, all of which are nice. So as far as your stats go when leveling up, more or less, you put enough into dexterity to use Stonebinder's Cuffs or to use whatever intelligence-based gear you're wearing, because a lot of the intelligence-based gear requires dexterity too. So those are your basically your thresholds. I personally always go with Stonebinder's Cuffs, so you want to get enough dexterity to wear them. And you also probably have to invest a little bit into strength to wear Stonebinder's Cuffs too. I had to dump a couple points into that. Everything else really goes into intelligence. I mean, once you have enough dexterity to wear gear, I just dumped everything into intelligence. I raised my health, I think, 2 times. I think I dumped 2 attribute points into it in total because I was a little bit low health while leveling up, but otherwise I wouldn't recommend it. As far as my secondary resists go, you can take a look at it there. Not it's decent defensive ability, and my secondary resists are pretty good too. And let's actually show you some combat. So combat with this build is pretty straightforward. Like I said at the start, I like to cast Plague on enemies that are far away, and then I let enemies that are close suffer from my my Death Chill aura. So usually for most battles, what you want to do is you want to run into them like I'm doing here, and you'll drop your Circle of Power on the ground, followed by your Briar Ward. After, well, actually, usually after both of those are down, I will hit my Soul Vortex, because that will drain all enemies that are within relative proximity of me. And once I have those abilities activated, I will usually hit refresh immediately after. So this is where it'll start getting hard, because I'm fighting a lot of archers. As you can see with X-Max, there's lots and lots and lots of enemies. So, it wasn't supposed to be that difficult there. Well, I was supposed to be explaining what I was doing, but I got carried away with all of the enemies. And out of cowardice, I retreated a few times there. But what you do is you run in there, you drop Circle of Power, drop Briar Ward, hit Soul Vortex, and then you hit refresh to immediately get those skills rotating on cooldown. And then you blast away with turning an attack. So, Circle of Power, my refresh is still on cooldown, but that's fine. As you can see, lots of enemies. And this is actually a better gauge of how good the build is than I expected it to be. I thought it was going to be easy peasy since I'm in an area that's typically not too hard, but this just goes to show that when you turn on X-Max, it gets quite a bit challenging, even in areas that you don't expect to be challenging. Turning an attack is going to be the main thing that you're using basically all the time. In an area like this too, when you have a lot of enemies running around and you can't really keep an eye on them all, I usually just throw Plague around from time to time. I can see I lost my Nymph too. She's a little bit weak, so that's expected. So we'll run in there. Oh, I lost my buffs too. That's no bueno. So this build too is very, very heavily centered around your buffs. So that's something to keep in mind. If your buffs go bye-bye, your damage goes bye-bye, because Death Chill Aura is going to be one of the main contributing factors of you doing good damage. And what I was saying before I lost my train of thought is I like to plague these group of enemies when I'm fighting them, because it will reduce the damage on them when they're archers. Also, the main reason that I put points into Life Drain was situations like this. One of the things that I really, really like about Life Drain is you can throw it at archers, and if you max it out, you'll be able to, it'll do a lot better damage, and it'll also hit all targets in the area around it, which is the downside of my Life Drain, is I don't have it maxed out. So here's Circle of Power, Briar Ward, Soul Vortex, Plague, and then spam turning an attack. That's our rotation. Circle of Power, Briar Ward, Soul Vortex, Plague, spam turning an attack. And there's a whole bunch of enemies up here. I'll show you, once I can get my cooldowns back up, I'll show you. Okay, we're going to pop my, a potion too. And by a potion, I mean one of the ones from Eternal Embers that makes me avoid projectiles a little bit more. And refresh is also good for situations like that where I needed to get more wolves up immediately. Like I was talking about at the beginning. It's good when you're logging into the game for the first time of the day. You can drop your wolves like that, get them down real quick. Man. X-Max can be a real pain in the butt. This is how the character is played, though. It's pretty straightforward. Like I say, a million times over. You drop Circle of Power at the start and Briar Ward, and then you usually pop Soul Vortex, which will give you enough survivability over the next 5 seconds. Or you can save Soul Vortex for a better time. Honestly, it would probably be smarter if you ran in and popped Soul Vortex first, because it would keep you alive long enough until you got everything else down. My rotation's a little ass backwards when it comes to that, but that's because this isn't my main character. And then usually, like I said, a million times again, refresh right when you get all of your main abilities on cooldown. Shroud of Kur. I don't think I've ever seen that monster in Frequent before. Oh yeah, I think I have seen it. So I'll end the video after this pack of enemies. I'm having fun though. They dispelled me. As I said before, any enemy that dispels is going to be the biggest issue for you. If your buffs do get dispelled, you need to immediately flee and rebuff yourself, because you need the Death Chill aura. You need the attack damage converted to health from the damage you deal to basically stay alive in combat. And anyway, that's really all there is to it. It would be pointless to keep going and going and going and showing you more and more. I'm pretty sure you guys got the hang of it by now and how it all works. But that's Soothsayer build for Titan Quest. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave me a like, because that'll help me out. And if you guys want to see more Titan Quest guides, be sure to let me know in the comments. If I got anything wrong too, be sure to let me know in the comment section, as you guys always do. I'll update it with some corrections. And yeah, I'll catch you guys around in future Titan Quest build videos. Peace.